Hey guys, this is Butch. I want to welcome you to another opportunity to dig into God's Word as story. In today's story, we're going to be looking at a really unusual character who has a tremendous problem and maybe see if there's some things we can learn about Israel and ourselves from his story. Stick with us. So in our story today, we're talking about Naaman, and Naaman was a Syrian or Aramean, I think was what it was called in those days. Before this story, way back when, God had told the children of Israel, listen, if you do the things I ask you to do, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to protect you, and I'm going to give you victory over your enemies. But if you don't do the things that I've asked you to do, then I am going to let your enemies have victory over you. And that leads us to our story from God's Word. Now, Naaman was a great and honorable man in the sight of his master, the king of Syria, because through Naaman, God had given Syria victory. Now, Naaman was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. Now, the Syrian army had gone off on a raid, and they brought captive a young girl who ended up serving Naaman's wife. And one day, this young girl said to her mistress, "If only my master was with the prophet who's in Samaria, he would heal him of his leprosy." Well, when Naaman heard what the little girl said, he went and told the king. Well, when the king of Syria heard this, he said to Naaman, "Go, and I'll write a letter to the king of Israel." And so Naaman left, and he took with him 150 pounds of gold, 750 pounds of silver, 10 changes of clothes, and the letter. And we're going to stop our story right there. So, man, here we see this guy who has all this stuff going for him, right? I mean, he's the commander of an army. Not only is he the commander, he is a victorious commander of an army. He's tight with the king. He has all kind of financial resources we see from the story. So somebody with all these advantages in life, what do you think it might have been for him in his situation? Would you want to trade places with Naaman? Yeah, some of you going, yeah, because you know what's coming later on in another story, right? But at this moment where he has leprosy, it's like, thank you very much. I'll keep what I got. But in the story, it says, now Naaman, commander of the army of Syria, was a great and honorable man in the sight of his master the king, because through Naaman, God had given Syria victory. So let's just stop right there for a second. It says he was a great and honorable man. And we see in here that he was responsible through the Lord for Syria having victory. And his master, the king, appreciated that, right? But, it says here he's a great and honorable man. Can you think of other adjectives that could be used for a victorious warrior? I'm thinking historically of great generals. They were, they were great planners, or they were great strategy kind of guys, or great motivators, or great warriors. But it says he was a great and honorable man in the sight of his master. So I wonder, the fact that these adjectives are used about Naaman, might that tell us anything about Naaman and his character? I mean, if Naaman had been a jerk and had been just driving people, are great and honorable the first things you would think of in a description? Yeah, it's kind of interesting that's what that's what his master thought. He's great and honorable, and then later on he says, because through Naaman God gave Syria the victory. Now we're not told that they recognize. As a matter of fact, later on in another part of a story associated with this, we see that there are other gods involved as far as the king was concerned. But does it seem like there's some recognition here that something else is going on just besides being a good general? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm just kind of digging here into the story to see what see what I can learn. So it says he was a mighty man of valor, but he had leprosy. I wonder if the one had something to do with the other. Let me elaborate on that a little bit. Do you think it's possible that maybe the fact he had leprosy made him even more courageous because he had less to lose? And could that be? But regardless of what we see there, we do see he was a strong, strong as far as fearsome or fearless, excuse me. I'm going to get my adjectives right here in a second. So what might we learn about his character from the fact that he was that guy? Does it seem like he would be easy for a soldier to follow because of who he was? Yeah, yet he had a limitation. He was a leper. Is that a small limitation in your mind, or a big limitation? I mean, what might we learn about him that he was still able to lead these troops, still able to, be this respected guy by the king, and yet he had this skin disease? Might that tell us anything about who he was as far as his character goes? Yeah, I'm just thinking, do you think it would have been easy for people just to judge him based on the fact he's a leper? Regardless of what else he has going on in his life, he's a leper. I mean, would that have been an easy thing to do? But the fact he was viewed as great and honorable and a mighty man of valor, what might you learn about Naaman here, just character-wise? Do you think this is a guy you'd want to hang out with? And maybe social distance because of the whole leprosy thing? Well, I wonder, what might we learn about Israel from the fact that Syria is the one whose armies are having victory? Do you remember what we talked about in the introduction? Yeah, it seems like, if Israel's enemies are being blessed, what might that tell us about Israel spiritually? Yeah, they could be having some problems, right? Well, I wonder, in the story we see that, Naaman is this great and honorable man. He's a mighty man of valor, but he has leprosy. Would it have been possible for him to use his leprosy as an excuse not to succeed in some areas, or not to be, honorable? I mean, could he have gone down a different path because of that? Could he have used, in other words, his leprosy as an excuse to not achieve certain things. Yeah. But, we're not told how the leprosy affected that, but the fact he still was a man of seemingly decent character, at least to those outside, in spite of the fact that he had this illness. I mean, what might that tell us about him? Yeah, I mean, it does seem like there were only, he didn't let his leprosy limit him. I wonder today, are there times that people let something that's going on keep them from becoming something else, or let it hold them back? I mean, what might that look like? I'm thinking if people have a lack of education, or maybe they're born at a certain socioeconomic level, and it's easy to use that as an excuse, right? Well, I can't become this or I can't become that because of these limitations. I think all of us from time to time tend to think that. But can you think of somebody you know, or a situation you know of, maybe in your life or the life of somebody you know, that those were, that there was something that was used as an excuse not to achieve? I wonder how Naaman's life here, how might that help us in the future? Yeah, for me, I mean, just to share a personal testimony, we live in Kentucky now, and we initially moved here because I had sensed, and my wife had sensed, a call on my life to teach pastors early on in ministry. And so I did the whole Bible college, whole seminary thing, and we moved here. I was going to finish up my MDiv and then go towards a PhD. And I did get my MDiv when we moved here. But the first time I went and did stories with a bunch of pastors in Haiti, I got done doing the first story, and 100 or more pastors in this very small church. And as I turned to the wall to prepare my next story, I heard the Lord just kind of asking me, what was it you just did? And I said, I just told a story. And, to whom? Well, to all these pastors. So what were you doing? I'm really slow. And I'm like, Lord, I'm just teaching these pastors. And then the light came on, like, whoa, I'm teaching pastors. And I realized at that point it was not necessary for me to get my advanced degree to do what God had been calling me to do. And up to that point, I was letting the fact that I did not have a PhD limit me and limit my understanding of what it meant to teach pastors. And since then, I have taught literally hundreds and hundreds, possibly into the thousands of pastors over these last several years. Actually, I know it's been over 1,000. And the limitation I had was one that was in here, and not a limitation from the Lord. And so I would challenge you. I don't know what God's calling you to do, but it's easy to sit back and go, well, I can't do that because of da 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 da. And trust the Lord. If the Lord is calling you to something, trust Him to be able to fulfill it. Well, this story is in 2 Kings chapter 5, just the first couple of verses of 2 Kings. I'm going to try to add another video tomorrow. This is a story. This was one of my very favorite stories of all time. Still is, honestly. I just haven't done it that much because I did it a lot. I told this story in a lot of venues because there's so much there. But getting ready to help with a class here soon that a friend of mine is teaching. And this is probably going to be one of the stories I'm going to use. Just wanted to kind of refresh myself in it. But if you have suggestions, or if you see some insights here that we didn't see, I would love for you to put it in the comment section. If you've not subscribed to the channel, kind of celebrating. I just got notice this last week. I have over 150 videos that we've done essentially in the last year since COVID hit. So kind of exciting what God is doing through limitations, right? But until the next time, keep on telling those Bible stories.